Pretend you're mine for a month. The millionaire said neither knew it would turn real. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The string quartet played softly under the golden chandeliers, and the ballroom shimmered with elegance. Waiters in white gloves floated through the crowd like ghosts carrying trays of champagne. Every guest seemed flawless, polished smiles, expensive perfume, and laughter that never reached their eyes. At the far corner, Evelyn adjusted the flower arrangement one last time. She was not supposed to stand out. She was only there to make sure the gala looked perfect for the wealthy donors who would never remember her name. Her simple black dress was meant to blend in, but her nervous fingers betrayed her. The rent was due, her father's hospital bills were growing, and she had already worked 2 extra shifts this week just to survive. Then, across the ballroom, Alexander Reed, the elusive tech millionaire, stood surrounded by investors and press. His tailored suit fit like armor, his expression cool and unreadable. To the world, he was untouchable. But tonight, for the first time in years, something was slipping out of his control. His board had demanded proof of stability before approving his next acquisition. That meant one thing. He needed to show up with a girlfriend, someone believable, respectable, and preferably before midnight. A journalist called out, "Mr. Reed, will your fiancée be joining us tonight?" Cameras flashed. His jaw tightened. He had no fiancée, no girlfriend, and no interest in faking one, until his eyes caught a glimpse of Evelyn standing near the stage, adjusting flowers as if hiding behind them. She looked startled when he walked straight toward her. The crowd parted. "Excuse me," he said quietly, voice calm but firm. "You work for the event?" Evelyn froze, clutching her clipboard. "Yes, sir. I am part of the decor team. Is something wrong?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Pretend you are with me." Her eyes widened. "I'm sorry, what?" "Just for tonight," he whispered. "Pretend you are mine." She blinked, confused. "Why me?" "Because," he said, slipping his arm lightly around her waist as the cameras turned their way, "you are the only real person in this room." Flashbulbs erupted. The reporter smiled, shouting, "Mr. Reed, is this your partner?" Alexander looked down at her and answered smoothly, "Yes, she is." The crowd applauded, mistaking surprise for grace. Evelyn's pulse raced. She tried to pull back, whispering, "I do not understand what is happening." He kept his expression steady for the cameras. "If you want to understand," he murmured, "meet me after the event. I will explain everything and I will make it worth your time." Her heart pounded in her chest. It was absurd, impossible, but the way he spoke, quiet, steady, sure, made her hesitate. Something in his tone sounded less like arrogance and more like desperation carefully hidden behind control. An hour later, when the lights dimmed and the guests began to leave, she found herself standing outside the hotel entrance, cold air brushing her skin. She could have walked away and forgotten the whole thing. She should have, but when a black car stopped and the window rolled down, revealing Alexander inside, she did not move. "Get in," he said softly. 5 minutes of your time. No tricks." Evelyn hesitated, then opened the door. The car smelled faintly of cedar and rain. He handed her a folded piece of paper, a contract, and said, "I need a partner, someone to stand beside me at 5 upcoming events this month. You will be compensated generously, and your privacy will be protected. This is not romance. It is business." She stared at the document. Her throat went dry. "You are asking me to be your fake girlfriend?" He nodded once. "For 30 days, that is all." Her mind spun. It was insane, like something from a movie. Yet when she thought of the overdue bills, her father's quiet voice on the phone from the hospital, and the hopeless numbers in her bank account, her resolve cracked. "I do not belong in your world," she whispered. Alexander's gaze softened. "Maybe that is exactly why I need you in it." She looked at the pen trembling between her fingers. One signature could change everything, and against every piece of logic she had ever known, she signed her name. Outside, the city lights blurred into gold and silver streaks. Inside the car, 2 strangers sat in silence, both unaware that their 1-month contract was about to rewrite their lives forever. The following morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains of Alexander's penthouse, turning the white marble floors into sheets of gold. Evelyn sat stiffly on the edge of a long leather sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The city stretched below, glittering and endless, but she could barely focus on anything beyond the man standing across from her. Alexander Reed, the man who had whispered to her at the gala, now looked every inch the millionaire he was rumored to be: calm, composed, almost too perfect. The steam from his coffee curled upward as he studied her with the same focus he might give a business report. "Before we begin," he said, placing a folder on the table, "I want to make sure you understand what this arrangement is." Evelyn nodded, though her stomach felt tight. "You said it was not romance, just business." "Exactly." He opened the folder, revealing a printed contract and a pen neatly aligned beside it. "This agreement will last 30 days. You will attend 5 public events with me as my partner. There will be photographs, interviews, and travel. You will receive full payment at the end of the term." She glanced at the paper, words blurring together. It looked like something out of a corporate deal: cold, precise, legally binding. "And what are the rules?" she asked quietly. He leaned back in his chair, his tone measured but not unkind. "Rule 1. Never discuss our agreement with anyone. Not your friends, not your family. Rule 2. You do not interfere with my business decisions or speak to the press without my approval. Rule 3. He paused, meeting her eyes. We do not fall in love." Her breath caught slightly. He said it as if it were a simple condition, like a clause in a contract. She nodded, forcing a faint smile. "That should be easy." Quote. Alexander's gaze softened just a fraction. "You would be surprised how often that line gets crossed." He pushed the contract toward her. "Read it carefully before you sign." Evelyn's fingers trembled as she turned each page. Everything was spelled out in clean, sterile language. Compensation amount, confidentiality clause, termination rights. For a moment, the words began to blur again, replaced by thoughts of hospital bills and overdue rent notices. Finally, she whispered, "It feels strange, putting something like this on paper." He folded his hands. "It is the only way to keep things clear. Feelings complicate business." The silence between them stretched. Outside, a siren wailed faintly, swallowed by the hum of traffic below. Evelyn took a slow breath and signed her name at the bottom. Alexander stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Hart." Her handshake was unsure. "What should I call you when we are in public?" "Alex," he said simply. "And you?" "Evelyn." "Good," he replied. "You will receive a call later today. My assistant will help you with wardrobe and etiquette preparation. We have our first event tomorrow evening." "Tomorrow," she repeated. "So soon?" "Time," he said, turning toward the window, "is one thing I never waste. Go." She watched him for a moment, his reflection in the glass, the city moving far below his shoulders, and wondered how a man who had everything could look so profoundly alone. Hours later, Evelyn returned to her small apartment. The contrast between the marble penthouse and her peeling walls felt almost cruel. She placed the copy of the contract on the table beside an unpaid electric bill. Her father's voice message blinked on her phone, cheerful but weary. She listened, tears pricking her eyes, then pressed her forehead against her hands. 30 days, she whispered. Just 30 days. The next afternoon, she met Grace, Alexander's assistant, a sharp, efficient woman who carried a tablet and spoke in clipped sentences. "You will need 3 formal gowns, 1 cocktail dress, and proper etiquette training," Grace explained. "Mr. Reed's image is polished. You will need to match it." Evelyn felt her cheeks warm. "I have never been to events like this before." Grace's expression softened slightly. "You will learn. You seem genuine. That is more valuable than perfection." By evening, Evelyn stood before a mirror in a sleek navy gown, hair pinned up, makeup light but elegant. She barely recognized the woman staring back. The reflection looked confident, poised, like someone who belonged in Alexander Reed's world. But deep inside, she still felt like the same girl who worked late nights arranging flowers to pay rent. When the limousine arrived, her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. The driver opened the door, and Alexander was already inside, dressed in a black suit, his cufflinks catching the light. He looked up and smiled faintly. "You clean up well," he said. "So do you," she replied, voice softer than she intended. As the car began to move through the glowing city streets, neither spoke for a moment. The quiet between them was not uncomfortable, just charged like the space before a storm. Alexander broke the silence first. "Remember the rules. Appear confident. Smile when the cameras flash. And no matter what happens tonight, do not let anyone see that this is fake." Evelyn looked out at the passing lights, her reflection merging with his in the glass. "Understood." He turned slightly toward her. "Good, because after tonight, the entire city will believe you are mine." She swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. Somewhere in the distance, the skyline shimmered with promise and danger both. And as the limousine carried them into the heart of the night, neither of them could know that this was the beginning of something far more real than either had agreed to. The ballroom glowed like a sea of light. Every crystal on the chandelier reflected flashes from hundreds of cameras. Reporters whispered, guests murmured, and champagne glasses clinked in perfect rhythm. Evelyn stepped out of the limousine on trembling legs, her hand lightly resting on Alexander's arm. He leaned close and whispered, "Remember, confidence. You belong here." The words steadied her more than she expected. As they walked toward the entrance, cameras flared, flooding her vision. Questions flew through the air like sparks. "Mr. Reed, who is your companion? Is she the woman you mentioned in your last interview?" Alexander smiled smoothly. "This is Evelyn Hart," he said, his voice calm and commanding. "She is with me." The world around them blurred. Every head turned toward her. Evelyn forced a polite smile, the kind she had practiced in the mirror. She could hear her own heartbeat beneath the orchestra music. The rich scent of roses and wine filled the air as they entered the hall. The event was the launch of a new technology project, Alexander's latest venture. Screens along the walls glowed with his company's name, and investors lined up to greet him. Evelyn tried to remember everything Grace had taught her about posture and etiquette. She smiled, shook hands, and nodded at the right moments. For a while it almost worked. Then a voice cut through the chatter, a woman's, sharp and confident. "Alexander Reed," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "You never told me you were seeing someone new." Evelyn turned. The woman was striking, dressed in silver, with a beauty that radiated power. She extended her hand. "Clara Jennings. I used to work with Alex." Alexander's polite mask stayed in place. "Clara, it has been a long time." Clara's gaze shifted to Evelyn, assessing, measuring. "You look lovely," she said. "But forgive me, you seem familiar. Are you from the press or one of the event staff?" Evelyn's stomach tightened. She forced a steady smile. "I help with design coordination," she said carefully. "And tonight, I am here as Mr. Reed's guest." The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Interesting." She looked back at Alexander. "You always did like surprises." Before Evelyn could respond, Alexander placed his hand gently on her back, guiding her toward the main table. His touch was steady, grounding. "Thank you for coming, Clara. Enjoy the evening," he said, ending the conversation. Once they were out of earshot, Evelyn exhaled, her voice low. "Was that your ex?" Alexander's jaw tightened slightly. "She was once part of the company, nothing more." They reached their seats near the center of the ballroom. Alexander nodded toward the stage where the host was introducing the night's keynote. Evelyn listened, trying to appear composed, but her thoughts swirled. The world he lived in was full of people who spoke in layers, every word carrying weight and implication. She felt small in comparison, like a shadow at the edge of his spotlight. Then it happened. During the speech, the host suddenly turned to them with a smile. "And tonight, we are honored to see Mr. Reed here with his partner. Alexander, would you like to say a few words about the inspiration behind your new project?" The microphone was passed to him. Without missing a beat, Alexander rose, his expression calm. But instead of talking about business, he turned toward her. "Every success," he began, "starts with one thing: trust. When people stand beside you, not because they have to, but because they choose to, it changes everything. Tonight, I am reminded of that." Evelyn's chest tightened. For a brief moment, his words felt too real. The applause that followed blurred in her ears. When he sat down, she whispered, "That sounded almost honest." He gave a faint smile. Maybe it was. The rest of the evening unfolded like a dream. They danced once, slow and steady, under the golden lights. His hand at her waist was firm but respectful. When she stumbled on the train of her gown, he steadied her, whispering, "You are doing fine." Later, as the night drew to a close, the photographers surrounded them again near the exit. Clara stood by the bar, watching, a knowing smirk on her lips. Evelyn kept her posture, her smile, her calm. She remembered Alexander's rule: never let them see it as fake. When they reached the car, she finally exhaled. I almost forgot this was an act. Alexander looked at her, his expression unreadable. Good. So did they. The city lights rippled across the windshield as the limousine pulled away. Evelyn leaned her head back, her pulse still racing. She had survived her first public test. Yet somewhere deep inside, a quiet unease, lingered a sense that pretending might soon become something far more dangerous than either of them intended. The next morning, sunlight poured through the high windows of Alexander's penthouse. Evelyn sat at the long breakfast table, staring at a bowl of untouched fruit. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, pictures from the gala already spreading online. Headlines called her the mystery woman beside Alexander Reed. She scrolled through the comments, her stomach twisting. Who is she? Probably another model. He changes girlfriends every quarter. She set the phone down and exhaled. Alexander appeared from the hallway, perfectly dressed as always, holding a cup of black coffee. You should eat, he said calmly. The internet never stops talking. You will get used to it. Evelyn looked up. You do not seem bothered. He gave a faint smile. I stopped reading comments years ago. Opinions are easy when people do not know the truth. His tone was steady, but something in his eyes betrayed a quiet fatigue. Evelyn hesitated, then asked softly, Does it ever get lonely? He looked out the window for a long moment. Success isolates. That is why I needed someone real to stand beside me. Someone who does not play the game. He turned back to her. That is why I chose you. The words caught her off guard. She felt warmth rise to her cheeks and quickly looked away. I am not sure I am doing a great job at pretending. You are, he said quietly. Last night, everyone believed us. She tried to smile, but it came out nervous. And you? Did you believe it too? Alexander did not answer. Instead, he set down his cup and handed her a slim folder. We have 2 more events this week. Charity luncheon on Thursday, board dinner on Saturday. Grace will help you prepare. Quote. Evelyn nodded, taking the folder. Understood. For the next few days, their worlds collided constantly, meetings, fittings, rehearsals. Evelyn learned how to hold herself in a room full of powerful people, how to smile without showing nerves, how to answer polite questions that were really disguised judgments. Alexander watched her quietly, sometimes amused, sometimes thoughtful. At the charity luncheon, she surprised everyone, including him, by handling a difficult donor with grace. When the man made a dismissive remark about working-class guests, Evelyn met it with a calm smile. I believe kindness is the real currency of success, she said. The table went silent. Alexander's lips curved slightly. Later, as they walked back to the car, he said, You handled that perfectly. I just spoke the truth, she replied. Exactly, he said, glancing at her. That is what most people forget to do. Cloak. That night she returned to her apartment feeling a strange mix of pride and confusion. Each day with him blurred the line between acting and being. The more she pretended, the more she forgot where the pretending ended. On Saturday, the board dinner took place in a rooftop restaurant overlooking the skyline. The evening air was cool, and the city glowed below like a field of stars. Evelyn arrived with Alexander, her navy dress flowing softly in the wind. The board members welcomed her warmly, impressed by how natural she seemed beside him. During the meal, laughter filled the table. Evelyn found herself relaxing, speaking easily with the others. She caught Alexander watching her several times, his expression unreadable but softer than usual. When the dinner ended, they lingered outside near the glass railing. The city stretched endlessly before them. Evelyn leaned slightly against the cool metal, her voice quiet. You know, for someone who claims not to believe in love, you are very good at acting like you do. Alexander's eyes met hers. And for someone who said she could keep her distance, you are standing very close. She blinked, her breath catching. I guess that makes us both liars. He stepped closer, the night breeze lifting a strand of her hair. Maybe we are just human. The air between them grew heavy with unspoken words. For a long moment, neither moved. The city lights shimmered around them, a silent witness to something shifting, something that was never part of the contract. Then Alexander exhaled softly and stepped back. You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day. Evelyn nodded, her voice barely steady. Of course. As the car took her home, she looked out the window, her reflection overlapping with the passing lights. Her heart was loud in her chest. The deal had rules, clear, simple, easy to follow. But that night, as she closed her eyes, She realized one truth she could not deny. The more she pretended to be his, the more she wished it were real. By the following week, the routine had become strangely familiar. Meetings, galas, interviews. Evelyn no longer needed Grace's coaching. Cameras no longer frightened her. She had learned how to stand beside Alexander with quiet confidence, how to smile when the flash went off, how to play her role so perfectly that even she almost believed it. But it felt different. The event was a private dinner for investors at Alexander's glass-walled penthouse. The city glowed beneath them, and a soft jazz band played near the terrace. Evelyn arrived early to help the staff prepare. She moved through the space, arranging flowers and checking details, her nerves humming. When Alexander entered, dressed in a charcoal suit, she caught her breath. He looked calm as always, but there was something in his expression, something lighter than usual. "You did this?" he asked, glancing at the setting. "I thought the room needed warmth," she replied. "It is perfect," he said. And for the first time, he sounded like he meant it. During dinner, Evelyn sat beside him while the investors discussed numbers and future plans. She stayed quiet until one of them turned to her with a polite smile. "You have been quite the mystery, Miss Hart. How did you two meet?" Evelyn froze for half a second. Alexander answered smoothly before she could speak. "At a charity event, she challenged one of my ideas. I was impressed." The table laughed. Evelyn smiled, nodding, pretending it was true. But under the table, her hand brushed his by accident. He did not pull away. Instead, his fingers rested lightly against hers for just a moment, barely noticeable, but enough to send a rush of warmth through her chest. Later, when the guests had gone and the night was quiet, Evelyn stayed to help the staff clean up. Alexander appeared by the window, the skyline behind him like a painting. "You handled tonight perfectly," he said. "Thank you," she whispered, setting down a glass. He studied her for a long moment. "You make this look easy. The attention, the spotlight, most people lose themselves in it." "Maybe I already did," she said softly. The words hung between them. Alexander's eyes darkened, the distance between them shrinking with every heartbeat. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "this was supposed to be simple." "It stopped being simple the moment you looked at me like that," she replied. The air grew still. He took a step closer, then another, until the city lights framed them both in silver and gold. "Tell me to stop," he said. She could not. For one brief moment, the world disappeared. His hand brushed her cheek, and the tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. But before the moment could deepen, the sound of a phone vibrating shattered the silence. Alexander stepped back, his jaw tightening. He checked the screen, his face hardening as he answered. "Yes, what is it?" His tone changed cold, sharp, all business again. "Handle it. I will call you back." He ended the call and turned away from the window, his composure restored like a mask being fastened back in place. Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. "Back to reality?" He met her eyes but said nothing. The silence between them was louder than any argument. Finally he said, "Tomorrow we have a press meeting. Try to rest." She nodded and left quietly, but her thoughts refused to settle. As the elevator doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall, dressed like a woman who belonged in his world, feeling like someone who did not. For the first time, she wondered if the danger in their deal was not being discovered by others, but by themselves, because pretending had begun to feel too real. The next morning, the press meeting unfolded under bright studio lights. Cameras clicked, microphones surrounded the table, and every reporter waited for Alexander's next announcement. Evelyn sat beside him, her posture steady, her smile polite. But inside, her thoughts were still tangled with the memory of the night before, his hand on her face, the look in his eyes before everything changed. Alexander spoke flawlessly, discussing his company's upcoming projects and new partnerships. He looked untouched by emotion, the perfect image of control. Yet when his gaze met hers, only for a second, she saw the same flicker of conflict she felt inside herself. When the meeting ended, Alexander's assistant, Grace, pulled Evelyn aside. "You did well," Grace said softly, though her eyes seemed to study her. "But a word of advice. Do not let feelings blur the contract. Mr. Reed values discipline." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I understand." That evening she tried to keep her distance. She stayed in her apartment, cooked a small meal, and ignored the headlines that now paired her name with Alexander's in bold letters. Still, every few minutes, she found herself glancing at her phone, waiting for a message that never came. Across the city, Alexander sat alone in his office, staring at the same skyline that had framed their almost moment. His mind replayed her words. "It stopped being simple the moment you looked at me like that." For the first time in years, his logic and his heart were at war. By the end of the week, another event approached, a weekend retreat for executives and partners at a private vineyard outside the city. They traveled together in silence, the air thick with what neither dared to say. When they arrived, the view opened to rolling hills and long tables set for a formal dinner beneath strings of light. As the evening unfolded, Evelyn found herself surrounded by strangers again. But this time, she did not feel invisible. People spoke to her with warmth, drawn by her sincerity. Alexander watched from across the table, quietly proud, though he never said it aloud. When the music began, one of the guests asked her to dance. Before she could answer, Alexander stood and offered his hand instead. "She is with me," he said, his tone calm but certain. On the dance floor, they moved slowly. The night air was soft, filled with the scent of grapes and candle smoke. "You should not have said that," she whispered. "It will only make people talk more." "Let them," he replied. "For once I do not care what they say." Her heart pounded. "And when the month ends?" He hesitated. "We will talk about that when it happens." Quote. The song faded, but neither moved. Under the vineyard lights, surrounded by whispers and the hum of distant laughter, they stood too close, caught in the space between what was pretend and what was starting to feel real. For the first time, Evelyn realized she was no longer afraid of being seen with him. She was only afraid of what would happen when the pretending had to end. The following morning, the vineyard was quiet except for the sound of distant birds. Evelyn stood on the balcony of her guest room, still replaying the moment from the night before the dance, his words, the warmth in his voice when he said he no longer cared what people thought. For a moment, she had allowed herself to believe that something real existed beneath their act. Her phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, expecting a message from Alexander. But what she saw made her blood run cold. A headline flashed across every major news site. Exposed. Alexander Reed's relationship is a contractual hoax. The article included leaked photos of their contract, with her signature clear at the bottom. Screenshots of private details filled the page. The story spread faster than fire, each comment more cruel than the last. Her hands shook as she called him, but the call went unanswered. Within an hour, her inbox overflowed with messages from journalists, strangers, and friends asking if it was true. She turned off her phone and sank onto the floor, heart pounding. By noon, Alexander arrived at her apartment. He looked as if he had not slept. "I am handling it," he said, his voice low but sharp. "Do not talk to anyone. Do not answer the door." "Someone leaked the contract, Alexander. Who would do that?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing across his face. "Someone from inside the company. Maybe a competitor, maybe a board member. It does not matter. I will fix it." She looked at him, tears threatening. "You promised to protect my privacy." His expression hardened, the distance between them growing again. "I did not plan for betrayal." The words stung. "So what happens now? You deny everything? Pretend we never met?" "I have to protect the company," he said quietly. "Investors are calling. The stock dropped 6% this morning. If I do not act, everything I built will fall apart." Evelyn stepped back. "And what about me? My name is everywhere. People think I sold myself to you." He looked away, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I am sorry." The apology sounded hollow. For the first time, she saw not the man who had held her hand under the lights, but the CEO who always put business before everything else. She took a shaky breath. "Then our contract is over." "Evelyn." She cut him off, her voice breaking. "You wanted someone real, remember? You found her, and now you are letting her go." He stood frozen as she turned away. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. That night, the story dominated every network. Analysts debated his credibility, and social media tore her apart. In her small apartment, Evelyn packed the dress she had worn to their first event and placed it in a box. Her heart felt hollow, but her decision was clear. Whatever had begun as a lie had turned into something true for her, and losing it hurt more than any truth ever could. 2 days passed, and Alexander barely left his office. The leak had shaken everything. Clients, investors, and the press all demanded explanations. The board called for an emergency meeting, and even his oldest allies began to doubt him. Every headline accused him of manipulating the public for sympathy, of staging romance to boost his image. He had built his empire on control, But now, control was the one thing he no longer had. At midnight, he sat alone in his office, staring at the city skyline through the glass. On his desk lay the broken remains of the contract, ripped down the middle, ink smudged with frustration. Evelyn's voice still echoed in his mind. You wanted someone real. You found her. He finally understood what that meant. Across town, Evelyn was back at the small flower shop where she had worked before everything changed. She arranged white lilies in silence, pretending not to hear the whispers from customers who recognized her face from the news. Every time the doorbell rang, her heart jumped, but it was never him. That afternoon, as the sky turned gray, the shop door opened again, and this time, it was. Alexander stood there, no suit, no entourage, just a man who looked exhausted but determined. The shop fell silent. Evelyn froze behind the counter. You should not be here, she said quietly. Someone will see you. Let them, he replied. I am done hiding. She shook her head, pain tightening her voice. It is too late. The world already knows everything. That is why I came, he said, to tell them the truth myself. Before she could respond, he placed a folded statement on the counter. I am holding a press conference this evening. I will tell them the leak was real, but that the contract ended weeks ago. I will tell them you were never part of any scheme. Evelyn looked at him, eyes shining. And what will that cost you? Maybe everything, he said. But losing you already cost me more. The air between them was still. She wanted to believe him, but trust once broken was not easily rebuilt. Why are you doing this? Because I lied when I said we could not fall in love, he said softly. That rule was broken the first night I held your hand. Her breath caught. For a moment, the noise of the street disappeared, leaving only the hum of their hearts. That evening, Alexander stood before dozens of cameras and said what no one expected. Yes, the relationship began as a contract, he admitted. But what grew from it was real. The woman you saw beside me is the reason I remembered what honesty looks like. The room fell silent. Reporters exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. Miles away, Evelyn watched the broadcast from the flower shop, tears sliding down her cheeks. It was the first time she had seen him look truly human. The truth was out, and with it, the man she had once thought only existed behind the mask of a millionaire. Weeks passed after the press conference. The media storm slowly quieted. Some believed Alexander's confession. Others called it a publicity stunt, but he did not care anymore. The company had stabilized, the board had calmed, and for the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. Evelyn returned to her ordinary rhythm, working at the flower shop, drinking cheap coffee in the mornings, walking home through the same quiet streets she had known before all of it began. Yet nothing truly felt the same. Every bouquet she arranged carried a faint memory of him, the scent of lilies, the color of navy silk, the echo of his voice when he said, "The rule was broken the first night I held your hand." One rainy afternoon, the doorbell above the shop chimed again. Evelyn turned, expecting another customer, but her hands froze when she saw him standing there. No cameras, no security, no spotlight, just Alexander, in a simple gray coat, holding a small box wrapped with a ribbon. "You forgot something," he said gently, placing the box on the counter. She opened it slowly. Inside was the broken contract taped together, smoothed flat and resting on top of it, a new paper with only one line written across it. No rules, no signatures, just us. Evelyn looked up, tears glimmering. "You are really not giving up, are you?" He smiled softly. "I already gave up everything else. This is the one thing I want to fight for." Godot. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped around the counter. When his hand reached for hers, she did not pull away. Outside, the rain softened into silver mist. Through the shop window, they stood surrounded by flowers, symbols of everything fragile yet alive. Alexander whispered, "No contracts this time." Evelyn nodded, smiling through her tears. "Only promises, we mean." Quote. And as the world moved quietly beyond the glass, two people who had started with a lie finally found something real, proof that love, when it chooses honesty, writes its own kind of forever.